Fear is not just an emotion. It is a silent architect, shaping the walls of your life long before you even realize you are living inside them. It whispers before you act. It hesitates before you speak. It questions before you believe. And most dangerously, it disguises itself as logic. You think you're being realistic. You think you're being careful. You think you're protecting yourself from failure. But what you are really doing is surrendering your future to an invisible enemy that has never built anything, never achieved anything, and never created anything of value. Fear has never written a masterpiece. Fear has never built an empire. Fear has never changed the world. And yet, fear has stopped millions from even trying. Right now, there is a version of you, stronger, sharper, more focused, more disciplined, a version of you that already exists in possibility. That version of you is not waiting for permission. It is waiting for you to silence the one thing that stands between who you are and who you could become. And that thing is fear. Understand this clearly. Fear is not your protector. It is your prison guard. It doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you small. It doesn't guide you. It controls you. It doesn't prepare you. It paralyzes you. And the longer you listen to it, the more power you give it. The more power you give it, the more it shapes your decisions. And the more it shapes your decisions, the more it shapes your destiny. Look at your life. Every missed opportunity, every delayed decision, every moment you chose comfort over growth. Trace it back, and you will find fear at the root. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. But here is the truth. Most people will never accept. Fear is not real in the way you think it is. It is a projection, a story, a future that has not happened, controlled by a mind that has been conditioned to doubt itself. And what you repeatedly tell yourself becomes your reality. If you tell yourself you are not ready, your mind will find evidence to support that. If you tell yourself you might fail, your mind will create hesitation. If you tell yourself you are not capable, your actions will reflect that belief, because the mind does not argue with you. It obeys you. So when you allow fear to speak louder than belief, you are programming your own limitation. But the moment you flip that script, everything changes. The moment you decide that fear will no longer be your advisor, but your opponent, you take your power back. Because fear only exists where belief is weak. Strengthen your belief, and fear begins to dissolve. They acted anyway. They moved forward despite the noise. They trusted their vision more than their fear. And that is the difference between those who build extraordinary lives and those who watch from the sidelines. Fear will tell you to wait. Belief will tell you to begin. Fear will tell you to stay comfortable. Growth will demand discomfort. Fear will show you every reason why something might go wrong. Vision will show you one reason why it might go right. And that is all you need. Because success is not built on certainty, it is built on courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward in spite of it. Think about that. Every time you hesitate, every time you overthink, every time you delay action, you are feeding fear. You are strengthening it. You are training your mind to retreat instead of advance. And what you train becomes automatic. Soon, hesitation becomes your default. Doubt becomes your language. Excuses become your comfort. And before you know it, years have passed. Opportunities have faded. And the life you once imagined becomes a distant memory. Not because you couldn't achieve it, but because you never decided to confront the one thing standing in your way. Fear. But here is where everything shifts. Fear is not something you eliminate. It is something you dominate. You don't wait for it to disappear. You build the strength to move through it. You don't silence it by ignoring it. You silence it by proving it wrong. Action is the weapon. Relentless, consistent, unapologetic action. Because fear cannot survive in an environment of movement. It thrives in stillness. It grows in hesitation. It multiplies in overthinking. But the moment you act, it weakens. The moment you take one step forward, your mind begins to rewire itself. It starts to gather new evidence. It starts to realize that the danger it imagined was never as real as it felt. And step by step, action by action, you begin to break the pattern. You begin to build confidence. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to see what you are truly capable of. And that is when fear loses its grip. Not because it's gone, but because you are stronger, because you have trained your mind to lead instead of follow, because you have decided that your vision matters more than your comfort. And once you reach that point, there is no going back, because now you understand something most people never will. Fear was never the enemy. Your obedience to it was, and now you are done obeying. The moment you stop obeying fear, you begin to see it for what it truly is, a test. Not a barrier, not a warning, not a sign to stop, but a challenge asking you one question over and over again. How badly do you want it? Because fear only appears when something matters. You don't feel fear doing ordinary things. You don't feel fear staying average. You don't feel fear repeating the same patterns, living the same days, thinking the same thoughts. Fear shows up when you are about to step into something greater, when you are about to outgrow your old identity, when you are about to demand more from yourself than you ever have before. That tight feeling in your chest, that hesitation in your mind, that voice telling you to slow down, to wait, to reconsider. It is not a signal to stop. It is proof that you are standing at the edge of transformation. And most people turn back right there. They feel the discomfort and mistake it for danger. They interpret that uncertainty as a sign they are not ready. They retreat into what is familiar, what is predictable, what is safe. But safe has never created greatness. Safe has never built empires. Safe has never rewritten destinies. Safe is comfortable. And comfort is where potential goes to die. Look at the lives of those who changed the world. Not because they were special, not because they were chosen, but because they made a decision most people avoid. A decision to move forward when everything inside them said stop. When Thomas Edison failed thousands of times, fear had every reason to convince him to quit, to tell him he wasn't capable, to remind him of every failed attempt. But he didn't listen. He redefined failure. He saw each attempt not as defeat, but as progress, and in doing so, he turned fear into fuel. When Henry Ford was told his vision was impossible, fear could have easily convinced him to stay small, to think small, to accept what already existed. But he didn't listen. He trusted his vision over public opinion. And that decision didn't just change his life. It changed the world. When Walt Disney was rejected, criticized, and told he lacked imagination, fear could have buried his dreams before they ever had a chance to breathe. But he didn't listen. Understand this. The difference between you and them is not capability. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is the relationship with fear. They did not eliminate it. They mastered it. And now, it is your turn. Because right now, there is something you know you should be doing, a move you have been delaying, a decision you have been avoiding, a step you have been overthinking. And deep down, you already know what it is. But fear has been sitting there, quietly negotiating with your potential, telling you to wait, telling you to prepare more, telling you to start tomorrow. But tomorrow is where dreams go to die. Tomorrow is the most dangerous lie you will ever believe, because tomorrow turns into next week. Next week turns into next year. And before you know it, your entire life becomes a series of almosts. Almost tried, almost started, almost became. And the tragedy is not failure. The tragedy is never knowing what could have been. So you must decide right now what kind of life you are willing to accept. A life controlled by fear, or a life defined by action, because you cannot have both. You cannot hold on to comfort and reach for greatness at the same time. You cannot listen to doubt and expect confidence to grow. You cannot wait for certainty and expect opportunity to stay. Life rewards movement. Life responds to action. Life expands for those who are willing to step into the unknown and claim what is theirs. And that requires something most people avoid at all costs. Responsibility. Total, unapologetic responsibility for your thoughts, your actions, your results. Because the moment you take responsibility, fear loses its excuses. It can no longer blame your past. It can no longer point at your circumstances. It can no longer justify your hesitation. Now it has to face something far more powerful. Your decision and decisions shape destiny. One decision to act, one decision to believe, one decision to move forward despite uncertainty. That is all it takes to shift the direction of your life. But understand this clearly, because you are breaking a pattern. You are stepping outside of what your mind has been conditioned to accept, and your mind will fight back. It will try to pull you into old habits. It will try to remind you of past failures. It will try to convince you that this time will be the same. But this time is different, because this time you are aware. This time you are choosing. This time you are no longer reacting. You are leading, and leadership begins within. It begins with controlling your thoughts, because your thoughts become your emotions. Your emotions drive your actions, and your actions create your results. So if you want to destroy fear, you must start at the source, your mind. You replace it with vision, with purpose, with certainty. You begin to see yourself not as you are, but as you are becoming. You begin to speak to yourself differently, stronger, sharper, more intentional, because identity drives behavior. And if you still see yourself as someone who hesitates, who doubts, who waits, then your actions will always reflect that. But if you begin to see yourself as someone who moves, who decides, who executes, then everything changes, because now action becomes natural. Now courage becomes your default. Now fear becomes irrelevant, not because it's gone, but because it no longer has authority over you. And when you reach that level, when you take back control of your mind, your actions, your direction, you become dangerous, not to others, but to the limits that once defined you. And limits were never meant to last. They were meant to be broken.